Missions Pulse. Know God's heart, join his mission.
When you say thriving on mission or continuing to seek and understand this macro thing that God is doing amidst a global pandemic, I think this is on a lot of people's heart right now.
Well, I do as well. There's an opportunity that lays before us that we can decide whether or not we're going to cower and take kind of the shelter in place, edicts and orders as a spiritual, banner over our lives of I just want to hide and let this thing and, kind of ride it out and let it all be over. Or there's the opportunity that we could engage to find out what is God doing in our lives? What is it? What potentially is it that we could engage with how the church has historically during times of crisis like this to see what the Spirit might be stirring within the church and within the world.
I love how you are pointing to the past of many things that have happened throughout history in the church. It has not ever been smooth sailing. I think there's times when there are mountaintops, there are valley experiences, but for many people around the world, it has not been smooth sailing. I mean, look, you go back to the days of Nero and then on and on and on up until recently I spent many years in China, cultural revolution, extreme persecution, pandemics throughout the world. How do we allow God to speak and use these events to inspire us to go deeper with him and thus to share his mission with others?
I think it's the opportunity for us to once again allow all the things that we would naturally and in the flesh rely upon for the supposed success of the church to be stripped away. I mean, these kind of times, especially in Western culture, where there has been very sadly an emphasis that has almost been intentionally given to a kind of a consumeristic type of religion. And a religious practice within our culture, those things suddenly are wiped out, and you are left with you have the Word and you have the Spirit, you have a prayer life, you have a devotional life, and suddenly you have to come back to the very just kind of skeletal nature of what is it that we build our faith upon. And so as individuals, I'll start there, and then I do think that we need to talk about it from a larger big C church and global level. But as individuals, this is tragic that people have lost their lives, that people are sick. I think about everybody from prime ministers and governmental leaders all the way around to friends that I know have been stricken ill and others who have lost family members. So then for the believer, how do we look into the space of personal suffering as a crucible where Christ can be lifted up, where the Spirit can fill our lives, where the Word of God can do its forming work around us so that we would look more like Christ. And so as individuals, whether you are a pastor or a member of a church, leader or volunteer, this is a time, I think, of deep self-reflection about what is it that makes up my spiritual life? What is it that I want to and should be engaging upon when life gets, with the air quotes, back to normal?
Yeah. Well, it's almost as if there is some sort of forced global Sabbath. And it sounds a little bit strange to call it that because I think people are suffering in many ways through this. But this is a time of of introspection, of reshifting our focus on God. What about you? Are you a glass half full, glass half empty kind of guy? I mean, what does this do in your personal? You're taking it to the personal level first, and I know you're going to go up 30,000 feet to the Big C Church. For you, what is something God is speaking to you right now?
Well, for me, and it's funny you ask, am I kind of glass half empty, half full? I would say it depends on what day we're talking about. Is it Monday or Friday?
I appreciate that honesty.
Yeah. So most days I try to kind of walk around saying I'm not an optimist and I'm not a pessimist. I'm just a realist, and we're the ones who actually make the world go round, and that agitates everybody else. But every once in a while I have a little bit of a smarmy attitude.
Okay, I want you to tweet that out and see what kind of response it gets right after this conversation.
That's right. For me, my wife and I, it has caused us to have a lot more time of personal conversation because I'm working remotely. I'm working from home. Our offices for Thomas Nelson Publishers are closed down at the moment.
Yeah.
And so all of our team is working remotely. And so Angie and I are together all day long, every day. And it's given us a chance just to talk about life. And we have probably prayed more during this time than we normally have. And we've read scriptures together that normally I don't think we would have dipped into. We actually kind of started through the book of Isaiah together of all things, which is not, the beginning part of Isaiah is not the happiest, kind of historical period for the people of God in the Old Testament. Yeah. But it was a time of suffering, a time of rebellion at that. It's like, okay, so how should we reflect upon these things? And so in my own personal life, I've had a blessed adult life. I had a blessed childhood raised by mom and dad, believers, active in church. I came to be a believer at an early age. I answered a call to vocational ministry when I was a teenager, preached my first sermon when I was 16 years old, which why in the world does anybody let a 16-year-old preach on a Sunday?
I wish I had a recording of that, right?
Well, I actually have this archaeological artifact called a cassette tape.
What is that? I don't even know. I'm 41 years old. I'm an exennial, so I'm following.
So I actually have a recording of that sermon, and it's
wow.
Yeah.
Awful, you said. Okay.
Yeah, it's awful. And so I've had a very blessed life of full-time ministry, Christian publishing, professor at, Christian University. And yet times like this is unprecedented for my lifetime.
Yeah.
And so for a moment like this, it does once again say, okay, what's really most important for us? We have two sons that are both in their early 20s. One of our sons got married in January, and so we have a new daughter-in-law, and so it is this moment where you're reassessing the things that are most important to you. And as somebody who's been an author, I mean, you mentioned that I wrote this book, Habits for Our Holiness. I've been very blessed. I have had the opportunity to author, co-author, collaborate on books and Bible studies. The number, I think, is up to 26 of different publications that I've been involved in.
Wow,
yeah.
That is an incredible amount.
Well, everybody's got a muscle to flex.
Yep.
Flex the muscle of God.
Yeah, I see the gun show right there.
and so there's a little bit of it. It's like, okay, if I didn't have any of that, none of the publication, none of the, curriculum vitae, none of the resume, strip all of those things away because these last 3 weeks, it's been me in this home office with this laptop computer and this, Blue Yeti microphone, doing WebEx and Zoom and Skype. I've done enough of these meetings to last a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so suddenly it's like, okay, if this is all you have, is Jesus enough?
Yeah.
And I remember I've used that phrase in a lot of messages and a lot of Bible studies. Jesus is enough, and this is one of those moments where you get tested with that. Is me, Mr. Professional Christian Publisher personality dude? Is Jesus really enough? If you lost all of the invitations to do Skype interviews or write articles or whatever it is Jesus enough?
Missions Pulse. Know God's heart, join His mission. This podcast is powered by Within Reach Global. Subscribe, watch, and listen on YouTube today. Visit missionspulse.com.